Hey Jabronis, so Jabroni Mike here, and in honor of the pay-per-view that just passed, I'm going to be going over the top 5 women's matches of all time. Now, I've already done this before, once before. I recorded it, and you know, I'm glad that I hesitated a little bit because one of the matches that was at WWE Evolution actually was on the list, so I would have had to redo this anyway. So, all things considered, let's get right into this list. Kicking things off, the number 5 women's match of all time is the Charlotte Flair versus Sasha Banks 2016 Hell in a Cell match. Just perfect way to kick off the countdown. So it's extremely violent, it's extremely technical. I never expected that creative would give the go-ahead for women to be in a Hell in a Cell match to begin with. That was sort of like, you know, whenever everybody was talking about the women's revolution and things are kind of brewing and going along, I was just like, oh man, I wish that they put them in a Hell in a Cell. And at the time, it was, you know, Paige and AJ Lee. Luckily, no disrespect to those aforementioned women, they did wait a little bit to do a Hell in a Cell because Sasha Banks and Charlotte weren't on the main roster then, but they are now. And whew, my goodness, they were in the midst of an amazing rivalry that just the tenacity between them and just it was violent. They hated one another, and it didn't really matter who the face or the heel was because the crowd liked both. That's always a good problem to have. It's something that Vince wish he could apply to the main event scene a lot of the time. Lord knows he can't. Whew. Moving on. The number 4 women's match of all time for the WWE is Lita versus Trish Stratus at Unforgiven in 2006. So right away, just it's not, from a technicality standpoint, it's not as good as a lot of the matches that are on this list. It's probably not even as good in the ring as the match that's before it. But the reason that it is on this list at all is because it's the culmination of a well-told story, and not just a well-told story, a well-told, well-drawn-out story. It just everything that Trish and Lita were as individual performers and as a rivalry kind of culminated all in one night. It was Trish's last title that she would capture, and up until the actual Evolution pay-per-view that just passed in October of 2018, it was her last match. It's really good. They have a lot of good chemistry. You know, there's no botches, and the crowd is just eating it up the whole time. Very similar to the WrestleMania X8 or WrestleMania 18 vibe between Hogan and The Rock, where the crowd is just so into it that it kind of doesn't matter what happens almost because they're eating it up, as I said. Yeah, well, it's very similar in that aspect. This is a match I can go back and watch, and while it doesn't have quite the rewatchability of some of the matches above it, it is absolutely deserving of the number 4 spot all time for the women's matches. Number 3 in the top 5 of the WWE women's matches of all time. Some familiar names going to be on this list, and both of these ladies are going to be on the countdown once more. Sasha Banks versus Charlotte on 2016's Final Raw, a Falls Count Anywhere match. Oh man, this was my favorite match for well over a year. I mean, it took AJ Styles and John Cena tearing the house down to finally supplant this as my favorite match within a calendar year. These two women absolutely brought it. This is the best version of Sasha versus Charlotte, and it happened on a freaking Raw. Like, that's such an Attitude Era thing to happen, to just be like, oh, and by the way, here's a classic match. Like, wow, it was amazing. The two of them were getting real brutal, and just everything that you would expect to see, you did. And there were a lot of things that you saw that you didn't expect to see. Like the fact that they go out into the stands and they actually take a lot of time out there beating the crap out of one another. That's not something that happens in a Falls Count Anywhere match between two men. Sasha and Charlotte were very good back and forth. There was so much drama and intrigue. The best part of it all, probably the reason that it makes this list, best finish to a Falls Count Anywhere match ever. So Sasha takes Charlotte, puts her in a bank statement using the actual metal guardrail that's a part of the stadium, like the stuff that people interact with when they're, you know, like the little handrail, and just takes it and just bending her and bending her. And, you know, the athlete that Charlotte is, of course, she can sell the hell out of it, make it look like she's actually being torqued, and it looked like it would break my back. So the whole time I was squeamish. It was a great match. Sasha would actually capture the title once more by that submission, which did finish the match. Man, to this day, I am just so grateful that that match was allowed to happen, because I feel like it was even more unlikely that they'd be able to have such a violent match on a Raw and to close the Raw with that than really anything else so far. The number 2 women's match of all time. So this is the only multi-women match on the entire list. 2015's NXT TakeOver rival, the 4 Horsewomen: Bayley, Becky, Sasha, Charlotte. An absolute clinic. My goodness. And the coronation at the very end, where finally Sasha Banks gets her moment. Like, dude, this was Sasha Banks being given the go-ahead that she was the number 1 woman in NXT, and very soon she'd be pulled up to the main roster. We all know how that's gone. But like this was huge. The character exchanges in the match, Charlotte and her athleticism, Bayley, who hadn't been overexposed and run into the ground yet, was just, her Bayley to bellies it was some of the most painful looking stuff I've ever seen. The way that Charlotte was moving around that ring and just delivering those big boots, and just, there's not a single thing about this match that a clinic wrestling fan would not love. It was absolutely monstrous. It was a thing of beauty. It had a perfect ending. The chemistry between all of the performers, just go watch this match right now. Well, I mean, maybe stay for the end, but then go watch the fucking match. Whew. Now, all these notes I have here that I've been looking at, toss them to the side. Had to redo this list, as I said. The number 1 match of all time just fucking happened. It's a singles match between Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, the for the women's title. The last woman standing match. Dude, there was, I don't even know if I have enough time to get into all of it. It was so good. The only botch of the entire thing, it's the one thing that people will bring up, is, oh, there's no way it can be the best when it had that. So Charlotte sets up Becky and puts her on a table and then does a moonsault, but kind of overshoots the table, clips the table, and the table doesn't break. So what does she do? Instead of just acting as though it was okay or just suplexing her through it, she hits her again, resets it up, and then does a fucking swanton. Like, tell me that's not cooler anyway. I've seen Charlotte do a moonsault a billion times. I know she can make it look good. That swanton was fantastic. Like, Jeff Hardy was in the back, like, great shit. Just the submission chemistry, the way that they used weapons, the kendo sticks, dude. The way that Charlotte was just getting pummeled, like, I was like, ooh, ooh, every single time. Oh my goodness. The crowd was so into these women as performers, specifically Becky Lynch. And I don't think I've ever seen a woman quite as over as Becky Lynch, honestly. Like, I know that it was Evolution and that it was about every woman on the roster that was at least healthy and active, and there were all these legends coming back. It was Becky Lynch's night. Like, her and Charlotte tore the house down. 5-star match. I don't throw that out very often. There's only a few of them ever. That's up there with like The Rock and Stone Cold at X7, Stone Cold and Bret Hart. Like, that was some great shit. I was absolutely blown away. If there are any people out there, whether they're men that don't think women can wrestle, women that have never been shown that other women can actually wrestle, show them this fucking match. It is so good. I cannot even put it into words. I don't want to give too much away. It's pretty recent, so go watch it. It's so fucking good. It's so fucking good. Thank you guys so much for coming by, seeing me talking about the top 5 women's matches of all time for WWE. It's been a real pleasure as always. I am Mike. This has been Jabroni Drive. Take it easy, Jabronis.